Okay, here we are gathered this morning. We're a group of kids back then. We grew up together in the hills of Mud City, in our cherished part of town, as a matter of fact. And this will be taking place when we were kids. Most of us would have been going to school at Coal Hill, except for Roger, who was at the other end of the Mud City Loop, and he was going to school at the Mud City Schoolhouse. And this would be back in the 40s and 50s, I would say. And so I will let everyone introduce themselves. There's one gentleman who is here. He's our guest of honor, and his name is Gus MacArthur. And Gus was a wonderful part of Mud City. He had the farm about a mile up from Coal Hill Road Junction. And with his family, Adeline and Richard and Roberta. And Rachel. And his wife, Ruth. And they had the farm that joined our farm, and I'm Jeanette Lepine. And I'm learning how to run this equipment, so you will not see my face, fortunately. Okay, so I will let each one of you introduce yourselves. So I will start with Adeline.
I'm Adeline MacArthur Lagoon.
I'm Dorothy Brown Mason. I was born in Bull Moose Farm at the foot of Bull Moose Mountain.
And I do think that Dorothy is the only citizen of Mud City that was born in Mud City, which is an interesting fact.
And still lives in it.
And still lives in Mud City. So,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Richard MacArthur.
Gus MacArthur.
Mabel Brown Solheim.
Roger Solheim.
And Gertrude Lepine.
Okay, now that we've met everybody, we shall try to give you a little history of what we have lived and what we have knowledge of our part of town. We do know that Mud City is a lovely part of town, and right now it's even lovelier because so many segments of our community have lost their agricultural aspect, and our housing developments, not just for people to live there affordable, but for the rich as well. So we're very proud of our part of the world that we know, and we were very fortunate in being able to spend our youth there because it has so much to offer us. I mean, it has the wonderful mountain of Sterling, full of trails and camping and so forth, fishing, hunting, and all of that. So we will start with whoever wants to start to talk about their knowledge of Mud City.
I want to start just because I want to relate how Mud City got its name, because it's often been a question that people have asked us. How did Mud City ever get her name? In fact, when you say Mud City Loops, a lot of people laugh and say, what's that? But according to Miss Moore, who was the librarian for years here, in 1935 she wrote a history of Morristown. And it was a Mr. Joseph Chaplin who had a 100-acre farm on the Beaver Meadow Road, what's called Beaver Meadow Road at this point. And one day, just in jesting, he declared himself the mayor of Mud City. He got the name Mud City, actually, they say, from Mud Brook, which was already named. And of course, Mud Brook follows right down by the Beaver Meadow Road. So at one point, he was very proud of his mayorship. But at one point, he wanted to change it to Maple Hill for some reason. I don't know, was there ever a hotel with the name of Maple Hill or something near your place? Yeah.
Right up at the top of the hill from where the farm used to be.
And there were 3 maples there or something, weren't there?
Yep.
So, but the people from Mud City voted on it, and they said no. They wanted to keep the name Mud City. So under his, in that same year, he did send a note to the Morrisville Messenger, who was our President News and Citizen, that Mud City had done quite a lot during his reign. They had a new a wooden bridge that was destined to be a steel bridge. That might have been the Zaner Bridge. Do you think that this was in 1898? I don't know if the Zaner Bridge was that.
It was all metal, certainly. but-
Yeah, it was metal.
Yeah.
And then there's another thing. What was it now that he thought was pretty good for Mud City? There was a cooper shop that had been started by the name of Charles Merrill.
And I
And
think that
then
was
another
Portuguese.
great thing, I think, which we might try to duplicate, is that every citizen in Mud City was displaying the U.S. flag. So that's what I've got to say about how Mud City came to have such a glorious name. Very identifying.
I guess I could say when we moved to Mud City, which was in probably 38,
Yeah.
we lived at Maple Hill.
You did?
We lived in that house.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, now that's interesting, because I didn't know about Maple Hill before I read this, you know?
Well, it was not a hotel when we lived in it, I'll tell you.
That was 37.
Was it 37? Oh, yeah, that's right. Or maybe 6. 6 or 7. Yep, that's right.
We moved there just the 1st of January, it was 37.
Or it had a winter, probably a blizzard, right? Yeah.
Well, I'm Dot Mason, and in 1929 I was born at the Bull Moose Farm, and in January, and that May we moved down to the house that I now live in, the little brown house beside the Lepine farm.
And we've often thought that that might be the oldest existing house of Mud City. I don't know if anybody else has any ideas what other house. Well, maybe your
Maybe
house.
our house.
Because that's a
Really?
Plank house, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's all plain.
Yeah.
Is it Mrs. Hannon's? What was Mrs. Hannon's house?
No, see, our house is a plank, it's set right on top like this, it's set
Yeah.
up, you know, and it's not a job
The
to
plank in the wall are all loose, they're just laid on top of the sill all the way up through.
Is that right?
Every now and then you'll have a nail down through one of them to keep it there.
Well, there was a sawmill too at the Zaner Bridge, and I think that probably that house was built from the leftovers,
Oh, yeah.
because it was all different lengths when we took the
Isn't that
house there.
Different thickness on the plank and everything else.
Yeah, there's thick ones and thin ones, and try to run an electric line through there, and you find out.
You try to insulate it too.
Insulation.
Yeah.
When you say electric line, remember when we got electricity?
About 37, wasn't it, when we got electricity?
No,
I think
40.
later.
40s?
39 or 40.
39 or 40.
Because when did we get it up in Sterling? 42, wasn't it? Just the year before we moved.
My Uncle Leslie took his horses and pulled electric cable through there with his horses
Oh, gosh.
all the way around.
Huh.
Hitched them on and pulled them through there. Yep.
Huh.
Yeah.
And little team.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I
speaking
remember.
of horses.
It went right by the schoolhouse, and we all ran over the window and watched him.
Yeah.
And we had a new teacher, she didn't like it very well.
Now, and speaking of
She
horses.
didn't like it when they blasted that hole right there at the corner of the
Yeah,
schoolhouse.
well, just a little ways from the thing, they had to set a pole, and there were a lot of rocks there, so they had to blast.
Oh.
So they blasted about 3 or 4 times. We thought it was great.
It really was pretty great to get electricity though.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow, that
Yeah.
was so
Yeah.
smart.
Don't you remember doing all your homework with the light,
Yeah,
lamps,
sure.
kerosene lamps?
Sure.
Oh,
We went to bed early. We still do. But we did, I mean, dark, in dark,
Sure.
we were
yeah.
ready to go to bed.
Well, speaking of horses, we've got a real horse couple in this group of Mud Cityites, Gus and Richard MacArthur. So you boys tell us all about the horse business here. I remember when you were logging, well, I don't know where you were logging at the time, but you must have been logging down, maybe out towards the Johnson end of town, because you used to come down through early in the morning with your team and go down through from our farm down to Clyde's, down below. Now, were you logging up on Caper somewhere, or
Can you hear that?
out towards Johnson? Do you remember that? Do you remember?
You were probably too
Yeah.
young then, maybe. You're still in school.
I
Do you remember
remember,
where you were logging and you had to go by Clyde Brinks?
Yeah.
Where were you logging?
Ernest Marston's, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, I can remember seeing him leave lots of times with
Yes.
his sled and his horses
Wow.
and
Yeah, because how many thousand feet of logs, Gus, would you guess that you cut in your lifetime with your horses and with Richard?
Not,
Would you have any idea?
not counting the pulp.
I know.
I know it.
Pulp was had a big market then, didn't
Oh,
it?
Yeah.
Compared to logs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can remember when we first moved where we are now, that was in '43. I think that they were cleaning up after the hurricane of '38, and the Gallup property had really been, that's all on that, I think the whole sugar bush went down at that time.
right.
Of course, we lost a lot of hours that year, for that sledging. And I remember Gerald Headlock was finally taking out some more logs with his horses, and he'd go down through, driving his team, and he was on the bunk of the sled that he took to bob out the logs. And somebody would comment, there he goes, he's gonna have piles in his back end like he's got piles in the bank.
There goes the richest family in the area.
I remember working with Gus way up in toward Beaver Meadow there.
Yeah.
When you cut logs up in there,
Yeah.
you had this great big two-man chainsaw,
Yeah.
lugging around 2 hours.
Oh, that was the first
In the
chainsaw.
stowaway to your belt, lugging that thing around.
Yeah. Yeah, they've come a long way with chainsaws.
Oh, yeah, I guess
Even
they
I
have.
can-
I think I was one of the first chainsaws to come out.
Yeah, it was.
It weighed about 100 pounds, I guess, or more.
Over 100.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
248 was the big bar.
yeah, oh, that was
I mean,
it.
148.
Yeah,
And 120 was the short bar.
yeah.
Oh, my God.
When you're out there wandering around the snow with your belt lugging that thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but Gus remembers the days too before the chainsaw, don't you, Gus?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that, when it went to you and come to me, that's all.
Lawrence never could hold his end out.
Got dragging back, right?
We were one
You
man
were the
solid.
newest one, that's why.
Yeah.
I can remember when we
We
have a
used
good,
to saw for a while, then she'd pound it and we'd saw for a while.
that's the way I made him keep his end up.
Colin Nolan's father called me up and said, you work after your chainsaw? And I said yes, and he said, what do you get an hour? I said, 3.5 for 2 men and a saw. And he didn't say anything for a minute. That time it was pretty good.
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, we'll work an hour, and if you're satisfied, we'll keep cutting, and if you ain't, we'll come home.
Yeah, right.
And we cut him 2 years supply of wood.
Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, in 11 hours.
You know, an hour today.
Yeah.
I can remember Dorothy and I cut pulp one year.
One summer.
One summer, we had all the children together, and one child would stay in my house and get meal for all of us, and Dorothy and I cut the pulp, and we peeled it, and we sold it.
Pop.
Pulp and pulp, so.
Yeah.
All
And
around the
those
world.
it wasn't a chainsaw we
No.
used either.
Buckshot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Buckshot.
Yeah.
That's all, I don't know.
Them
Oh,
trees
they're-
all grown back again then.
Oh, they're big, they're huge, those trees
Oh,
now.
apples grow fast.
Yes, they do, and they break over. fast.
Oh, I think every one of us here has handled a saw or an axe or
one time
something,
or another.
and a hammer too. Jeanette's pretty
Yes.
good with a hammer, I'm not.
Going back then, when they, you know, used to have barn building bees.
Oh, yes.
Now, your barn, Gus, was Mr. Wells, Irving, used to live down at the Sherman Bridge. You know, right there,
Oh, Don Sherman.
yeah.
Yeah.
And he was a builder,
Yeah.
because didn't he build the framing of your barn and Pa's too?
Yeah,
When
what
we
was
built our barn.
Irving's first name? Irving
Uh-huh.
Wells.
Irving Wells.
Irving Wells
Yes.
and
Yeah.
his father.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know who
And then-
built our
And then the barn, the bee was, I'll never forget, because, the major attraction was Roger's dad, Jesse. Balancing himself on the rafters.
Yeah.
But, you know, you would get a barn up in pretty good time with those old barn bees.
Yeah.
But a lot of the neighbors
They
helped.
worked.
Oh, I know, it was a whole neighborhood.
Oh, no,
a whole neighborhood situation.
Came up from chores and Dee was at the house and I said, aren't you going to work? She said, no, I wouldn't miss this bee for anything. Hell, it would work.
Yeah, right.
So they just had a, you know, a fun time.
Yeah, and that was in 1948,
Yeah,
48?
No, 45.
45, yeah. We built our barn, and that was about, I think you had built yours before,
and of
Gus.
course, it was, Glenn was working with Irving Wells that summer when the barn went up.
This big room, I can't hear much.
Can't
Yeah,
hear
it's hard
much.
to
They're
hear.
talking about when the other barn was, when did you build your barn?
44.
Yeah, it was
40, so it was the year before
Yeah.
Pa built it, yeah.
I can't imagine me being home though, because he was in service most of the time.
Yeah, no, he was working for Dumas, I think.
Dumas,
Yeah, that's
Just
before he went
before.
into service.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they're the ones that put the fan
Right.
in the barn. I don't remember if Dee was still with Dumas then, but
Probably was, because I think he went from there right into the service. He
He
went in
did.
there at 17,
he
age
did,
17.
yeah. How is Dee?
Pretty good.
Yeah, it's good,
Coming up this spring, I hope.
yeah.
Yeah, and of course, Glenn Brown, Dot and Mabel's dad, was a great military man, and he never missed a war, even all the way through to the Korean War. And yet, the U.S. Navy released him without pension. They sent him home because he had sugar at this
Was
point.
that right?
But every conflict that America was ever in, since that man was born, he served. And then he would
Well,
take leave, you know, in between. How many breaks do you think that he took?
They said he had to be in 50 years, and when he was in 49 years, they discharged him.
is that right?
Yeah. So,
Politics.
Oh,
But anyway, talking about the old folks,
yeah.
I can remember when we were kids, teenagers, you know, we'd always have a pickup baseball game
Oh,
on a
yes.
Sunday afternoon or Saturday. And
Up in that field.
I can remember, and I can remember once we were playing down, of course, whatever field was mowed first, where we could find a place to play. And I remember once during the war, I don't know if it was Morris or Kenneth that was out up on leave, and they came running, you know, all in uniform, they were just, and of course, we all looked up to them, and they got up at the bat, you know, we never found the ball, but that thing so hard. And then another game I remember, we were playing down, well, just opposite where the pig pen used to be, you know, just around the corner, in that field on the right. And Glenn and Natalie were both playing. And they were the worst people to play with. They got tagged out, but they'd swear they didn't get tagged out.
Oh, absolutely.
They'd argue up and down, so we said, okay, you can run your bases if you want to, but you won't count. They'd go way out of baseline, you know. Just like a game of tag. It was crazy. But we had so much fun with that.
I remember when Roger's dad used to load us all into the back of their big old milk truck, and we'd go to other towns and play.
Is that
games.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure,
that was pretty,
McNeil.
yeah,
Stowe, probably.
Probably.
Elmore.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I can't remember that, but I do remember talking about, what was it? I was thinking of something that was good. Oh, about one trip. See, I was at Johnson, so I didn't start school as quick as when colleges used to be later. They used to start after Labor Day. And Glenn and Grace and Atlee and Ethel wanted to go camping up to Sterling Pond. So they wanted me to drive. Atlee had this old truck that leaked, the radiator leaked like hell. Yeah, and they wanted me to drive them up Smuggler's Notch so they could go up to Sterling Pond and cross over. But I had a bucket, and every time we'd come to a brook, you'd have to get fill the radiator. But we made it up and I came back home, and they had a great time, I guess. So they walked all the way back home, over the mountain.
That reminds me of when I was in nursing school,
Yeah.
And Roger would bring me back to Montpelier. And of course, couldn't buy tires back in those days, so we had real old tires. He had real old tires on his car. And it'd go flat, and Bea would be in the back seat patching the tires as fast as they'd go flat, put them back on the way we'd go. I don't know how many times we did that.
Well, we had a good story about flat tires too. I don't know if any of you remember that little Woody that was the first car first truck. It was a Woody that had been cut down so that the bottom part of the doors were still there. They sort of made the sideboard.
Yeah.
And Andre and a bunch of his friends wanted to go up to Sterling Pond camp. So we headed out. Jeanette was with me, and of course they drove up. But I had a driving license, so I drove the truck back. But on the way over, we had a flat tire, and we didn't have a spare. No, it was during probably around 43, maybe 44.
Yes, it was, because I graduated in
Yeah.
43, so it had to
And,
be before then.
So we kept going on that flat tire. Well, we came to it's now a bike shop, isn't it? Jeanette, that brick house right near the cemetery.
It was Strong's.
It was Strong's, and we spotted a Model A out there with tires on it. Oh no! Like a bunch of stupid kids, we drive in and we asked them if we could take a tire off. They said no way. So we headed up Smuggler's Notch on that flat. We got up there, and the boys unloaded, and they headed for that thing. And here, Jeanette, I think it was Jeanette and I that were left. I think Jeanette had come with me. You remember, Jeanette, if you had come with me? Oh, maybe it was Therese, so somebody had come with me. And we drove all the way home on that spare. And that rim, of course, the tire was all gone. We got home, and there was just a rim, and the rim was just about ready to give up. Oh, God. And now I look at the kids, crazy things they do, and I think back of,
Crazy things we did.
Yeah, I know. Not too much, I don't know.
Well,
A lot of courage, yes.
Now, what does anyone remember, anything of interest, that they really remember well of the rural school days at Mud City and Coal Hill?
Oh, I remember the games we used to play at Mud City. I don't remember playing games at Coal Hill. But at Mud City, we used to, probably, at Mud City, we used to play that game where you threw the ball
Alley
over.
over.
Alley over, right.
Yes.
And what was the other game? Where
Cross the
you,
line, probably. Cross over the line. Do you remember that game?
where you chose sides and you had to had prisons.
Yes, yes.
And you tried to get over there without getting tagged.
That's
to
right.
Get somebody back. What was
Yeah.
that called?
Cross over the line.
Cross over
Cross
the
over
line.
the line? Right. I remember
That's what we
playing
called
that.
it. Yeah, there was a lot of good games. But at Coal Hill, the last, I don't know if it was, no, it was when Andrew was still there.
And B and
And
Gerard.
And Gerard, they were the big boys. And somebody invented the game Wild Man, which was a very strenuous game. Somebody was voted to
be the wild man.
to be the wild man. And they'd run away, and we'd give them a minute or so. I don't know if anybody counted. But then the whole gang would take off trying to catch them, trying to find them. And sometimes we'd end up way up in the woods. I remember one day we ended way up in Marush's, on the front of the, across the road, you know, and the bell was ringing, nobody heard it.
Or made believe they didn't.
Yeah.
That
But
happened
we'd
too.
always find our way back.
How about the time a bunch of us jumped out the window and the
Yeah.
teacher run out to get us and jumped off the end of the porch and sprained her ankles and you come out, oh, hey, you guys are going to see the teacher ball, come on by.
That was in the
That was
era
where the teacher
when
was.
students were very cruel to their teacher.
Like the day we went up in the woods, and that was in Rush's site.
Yeah.
When we came back, every one of us had eaten leeks. We smelled terrible.
And wasn't that the day that the school board was there?
Yes.
Mr. Stafford, was it, yeah, Charlie Stafford, he had that long hearing aid.
Yes,
thing.
I remember that.
Yeah, that was awful.
That was an awful
Embarrassing.
thing to do for the
You were pretty
teacher.
much out of control. That
Yeah.
wasn't happening everywhere.
No, I don't think so.
We never did that at Mud City.
Typical of Colville, right?
Scoville.
I
You
learned
did.
in a lot, but you ain't sure
You remember what your kids did, some kids in the neighborhood, right?
And I remember, it was, it's once in a while, this one time Andre had, you know, we had that big closet where we hung our clothes and there were doors. And Andre had got in there before school ended, and we were all singing God Bless America or something, and Andre was at the top of his voice.
Out of the closet.
In the closet. Oh, God.
We should talk about the things we used to, we never had money to buy toys or buy things to do with, but I can remember the neighborhood got together. Remember that big hill behind our house and we made a ski jump out of it?
Yeah.
We used to
I
come
remember
down,
skiing there.
Sure, we'd ski
Yes.
down. And we made bigger ski jump, which was a little more
Yeah.
risky on part. We didn't break our necks, but we didn't. We used to make our own jumpers, make our own skis.
Oh, yeah.
Roger knows how to, he used to make skis. Tell him how you did that.
We used to make our skis, we'd take them railings on the side of a bed, you know, that was about that wide.
Yeah,
They'd be that thick, an inch thick. We'd heave them all down,
yeah.
then we'd leave the middle high so we could put a rope through there.
Oh, yeah.
And
Wow.
on the point of them, we'd heat them in my mother's hot water reservoir on the stove, get them
Yeah.
nice and water soaked and
Yeah.
everything. Then we'd take them out in the woodshed, put them up on a beam like this and bend them down and brace it up in.
Wow.
Leave them for about a week, then take
Wow.
them down. We had pretty good skis.
Yeah, that was
We'd
good.
take an old round rod, heat that red hot, and then we'd down the middle on the bottom of the ski, we'd draw a little groove down through there, burn it down through.
My God.
How about bindings?
could never
We
buy
had some good skis then.
Yeah.
How about bindings, Roger? How'd you keep them on?
We had just a strap, went through the middle of the ski, then took a rubber band off of the inner tube, put it around the foot like this,
Yeah.
have them on.
We got to be good skiers though. And jumpers. Didn't you, Bridget, didn't you make jumpers? Ski
From
jumpers?
barrel staves.
Yes, and barrel staves. We sat down, came down over the,
Remember
Jump
driving down
down.
Bull Moose Mountain on one?
Oh, my God.
wow.
Whoever brought a tire way up on top of Bull Moose and let it go? Somebody did. Did you hear? Who was it, Richard? Did you remember that? Somebody had taken a tire, rolled it way up the top of the mountain, Bull Moose, and let it go down.
Of course, it was clear then.
Of course it was clear.
Because that had a lot of
Yeah.
sheep on that.
Yeah, and
Is that
that
right?
was all,
Sheep.
Yes,
that cheap
'cause I-
way up at it,
Yeah.
kept that all ate right off.
Yeah, do you know who the farmer was that did that?
No, who had sheep?
But
No.
Dad
My
had
father
sheep
did.
there. Dad had sheep
Yeah.
there.
You did?
Because didn't we get tired of building the fence?
Yes. There's no such thing as keeping them in, but
And we never could satisfy Dad how we hammered in the nails on those
No.
posts.
And then whoever posted it was all lead up through there.
Yeah, well, we tried.
yeah, and then for a while we had to go up and chase them down so that they'd come down to the brook because he thought they weren't getting enough water. Every day, all summer long, up the mountain, chase them down.
Oh, that was quite a hill to, because
Yeah.
when we were in Sterling, our cows used to go up there and graze, because there was no farmer on Bull Moose, on the Bull Moose farm then. And, of course, when the wind was right, we could holler. If they heard us, they'd start coming down, but otherwise, there was two of us, we took turns, go after cows.
Right. I was counting the places around quickly,
Yeah.
and I thought I counted 21 residences around the loop, and
Yeah.
12 of those were farmers.
Yes, all of that,
Now we have two.
Yeah.
yeah, well, three if you count Jeanette's little farm,
Oh, yes.
right on the bottom end.
Yeah, and that was in the era when, you know, everybody was subsisting,
Right.
you know,
Yes,
it was in the era when
Right.
everybody was
That was in the
making
late
a good living,
30s.
and you never felt, you were poor monetary wise, but I don't think most people in that era ever felt poverty as such. Everybody had a good garden, everybody knew how to can, and then when electricity came, they learned how to freeze, and, you know, grow their own potatoes that you could, you know, and cabbage and this type of thing, you could just put down solid, and you didn't live off the store shelf as much as, you know,
No, how many
society
times did
does
you go to
today.
town?
I know.
Hardly ever.
Never went to town.
Never went to town to buy
And,
them.
Oh, we had our own chickens, had our own pigs.
Yeah.
So we had everything.
Yeah.
Or when we did go to town, remember how many people we used to stop in the car?
We got a car.
Yeah. But talking about cows, I do remember this about Herschel. He talked to him quite often about her. I don't know what color she was, but he called her Old 90. And I said, what did you call her Old 90? He said, because she gave 90 pounds of milk. I never disputed it.
There was.
Yeah, but he didn't say how long it took her to.
No.
3 years?
Yeah, of course, that was back in the days when cows weren't pushed, you know, I mean, cows weren't meant to give 100 pounds of milk, but they are today, but it's not.
No, they were just meant to
They were
raise out a
meant
calf.
to grow out a calf. So, and then back in those days, you know, there was no improved pastures or anything, so the cow's diet wasn't conducive to production like it is
No,
today.
and I think that's where you know, I was thinking this morning about, I can remember probably in the 60s, maybe late 50s, when on a Saturday or Sunday, there would probably be about 4 or 5 beagles out hunting around that loop,
I wouldn't doubt that.
because there were so many rabbits.
Yeah.
And it's just when all this land that had been grazed, you know, all the woodland was growing back up, and all this balsam, these little balsam things. And now you can't find a rabbit if you want to.
I never see a rabbit track.
No,
And
very, very
down in our
seldom.
swamp, there used to be
I know,
paths,
I know.
white paths
I
of
know.
rabbit tracks.
No.
We haven't mentioned our famous basin, our old swimming pool.
Oh, that's right, oh,
Because
yeah.
we used to go up to Gus and have lots and lots of hay to get in, and a whole neighborhood kids would go so their kids could come.
Yeah.
And all go down to the swimming pool. We really needed it too. After working in the
I
hay
think
field.
Dorothy was the best swimmer of us all. We didn't go down to the local swimming pools that they now have today. We were self-taught by whoever happened to know how to swim in the neighborhood, and Doc was the one that taught me how to swim. And that was before we were allowed, I think, to go all the way down to the basin. We were still pretty small.
Yeah.
And so, but we would go down to Atley and Ethel May's place.
Right.
They had that,
Yeah.
old
Yeah, that
little
pool.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's where I learned how to swim, and Doc was the one that
I did too.
taught me how.
We used to go swimming though on Patnell's, you know, that brook that runs past Patnell's farm.
Yeah.
There used to be one little spot there. We probably didn't come to our knees, but
No.
we'd swim.
Yeah.
First we were little.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good little brook for fishing too.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, kids miss that now. I mean, there's still the basin, but it's all older people that, you know.
Mhm.
There's people from away. That-
Yeah, it's
that
not
was
the
just
neighborhood.
It was just neighbors.
Yeah, this was just,
Back then, there used to be good fishing too.
wasn't there?
Yeah.
I remember your brook.
Yeah.
I fished that quite a few times. That was a nice water.
Right.
And even the Patnell brook.
When I was going to school down there in Mud City,
Yeah,
we always went home for the dinner, because we just lived around the corner.
sure.
And when I done after dinner, I'd dig up a can full of fish worm,
Yeah.
take it back to school with me in my fish bowl. When school was out, I'd head for Beaver Meadow.
Oh, yeah.
I'd walk way up there,
Oh,
all
my
over,
God.
way up in the
That was
mountains.
fun fishing, wasn't
Yeah.
it, while it lasted?
And I had one of the, I didn't have no fishing basket, I had one of these 5-pound lard cans that they used to buy lard in.
Yes,
About that tall, I'd cut a hole in the top of it and just put fish in.
oh, yeah.
I'd have that thing solid full when I come back.
Yeah,
Of course, you could keep 21 fish
I
back
know,
then.
I know.
Yeah.
Now, my God, I
I
fished.
wouldn't get home till about dark.
No, that's when kids like to fish.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
guess they
that's
still
good.
do,
Nice
but
ones up in there too.
it's not the same. There aren't any fish left in those little brooks.
No.
Even the Sterling Brook and the Beaver Meadow Brook. And once in a while, somebody hits it good, but I've tried every summer, and I'm not lucky.
I think they spoiled that one. They started letting them take them fish 3-4 inches long.
Oh, yeah. Now there's no
No limit.
limit on
Keep anything. I
side.
think that's what spoiled it.
Could be. Have you ever gone up to the Ransom Pond up on the, well, you go right
Oh,
up
yeah.
Mud Brook, you
Yeah,
know? And
yeah.
that, I fished that the first year I retired, and that was pretty good.
Mhm.
But then somebody else was going up there, they always, and every time I go out, there's a new, they had a bonfire, and I think they had fish fries.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's gotten to the point where there's
Nothing in it now.
nothing, no.
How about roads? Remember what
Oh,
roads
yeah.
were like way back then?
Mud.
Remember where it used to get muddiest?
Yeah, up through the woods, past my house,
Yeah.
up to your
It
house.
used to be really bad, or,
From there down to Old Colton.
yes, that's what I was
That
thinking
used to be a
about.
bad place.
The worst is from the big bend up just a ways.
You're right, that's where I always just leave my car.
Yeah.
The garden
Even
walk.
when I was teaching in Bakersfield, I had this old 39 Ford, and I remember one night, I was coming up, it was dark, and I just bottomed right out right there, and so I just left it. And the next morning I woke up, and there was my car in the yard. Well, B and Andrew had gone out that night.
As you
And they-
know.
And they had pulled that thing out and
Brought it up.
brought it up. I don't know, there really was no way for a car to really get by. But I figured if I got stuck, everybody else would get stuck. So maybe it was the best place to stop.
True.
But roads have improved a lot.
Yeah, I remember, my brother and I both worked in the village. Well, I worked at Stone.
Yeah,
Johnson, he worked in the village.
yeah.
So I left my car down the bottom of that terrible
Oh,
mess,
yeah.
and he left his on the top.
Oh,
So
yeah.
all we had to do was walk through the mud,
Oh, yeah,
and
I
then we
see.
came home or went
Yeah.
wherever we were going. They
That's
were pretty
nice.
good there for 2-3 weeks.
Well, Mud City roads lived up to the name of Mud City
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah.
Now they're taken care of so much better.
Where does the paving stop now?
Right at that bridge down by, used to be the old Putnam Farm.
Yeah,
Oh,
Right.
I thought it went up the hill a little
They
bit.
tried
it
did
does.
one time, but
they
they
tried
dug
it
it all up.
Oh,
twice.
is that
They
right?
dug it all up, put it back to dirt.
Yeah,
Oh,
but didn't they try it twice, carrying it?
No,
Just
I-
one?
I think just one.
Yeah,
Just
they
one.
had just one, then
Yeah.
they dug it up.
They
Yeah.
chewed it all up,
Well,
took it away.
you know,
I didn't know that.
in the
Yeah.
spring.
Yeah, they did the same thing with Lyle McKee's Hill, and
Yeah.
that didn't work.
Now they've got a lot of gravel, but they haven't done our stretch yet.
No,
They said they would this year.
they were gonna redo that bridge by our house,
That's
the
right.
Thane Bridge this year, but they,
That's right.
actually, they told us they'd run out of money.
Oh, yeah, they probably
It was
did.
gonna cost more than what they
Yeah.
estimated, and
The
so they
state
had
maybe,
to wait.
probably the state might have the money too, 'cause I think.
Probably, yeah.
So what,
Now, does anyone have any other little tidbits when they were kids? If not, we can move on to what each one of you has, what you're doing, what you were doing today before you retired. What became your vocation in life? So why don't we start with you, Edma?
Okay. I was certified as a teacher, and I did teach for 12 years, I guess. Raised a family of 4 kids. That's about it.
Yeah, and what field of teaching were you?
I started at Lamson Hill, which was a
You
little
did?
rural school.
Isn't that great?
Yep. And I lived with Leslie and Lena and walked up to school, and I think there were about 10 kids there. And I taught there for 2 years, and then I taught in the village in the elementary school. Then I went back to UVM and finished my degree, and then I ended up with special education and working with dyslexics and ADD kids.
I see. Very good.
I was the bookkeeper for Parker and Stearns. I did all their bookkeeping. And then I retired and raised my family.
Very good.
And I will tell you something about Dot and her family. Mama was a pretty wise woman. And she watched this family grow, and she said, there is not a better mother in this world than Dorothy. And that was coming from Mama, as sincere as she could be. Yeah.
And she's still working with kids.
I know, she hasn't forgotten.
I think Dorothy is the only one in this group that is not retired.
Well, I retired and almost went crazy, so I went back to work.
Richard isn't retired.
No,
Oh, that's right, Richard isn't retired.
thank God, he saves us more.
Now I work 5 days a week with small children.
And Gus is retired, right?
Right.
But Richard had a great career.
Yeah, well, Richard, tell us about
Your
it.
turn.
And turn around, Richard, because it's, you're sort
Ain't got
of.
much to say.
God, you built how many miles of railroad? Not railroad, but interstate.
What are some of the special parts of it that you worked on?
Oh, we're talking 200 miles to the north side.
Yeah.
Uh, 75 miles to 89. 80 miles to 91. 60 miles to 93.
In how many years?
35.
35 years, wow. And he learned a lot. Richard. I mean, we can't, you know, Richard has been our lifesaver when we were still farming. He still is. I mean, he can do things that I don't think anybody else can do. He can look at a piece of machinery that he's probably never seen before, and he can tell you why it isn't working.
Put it
Or
back
remember
together.
Yeah.
Put it back together.
Yeah. I remember when our son David had an old Volkswagen that he couldn't repair. They said it was beyond repair. So I took it up to Richard and he put some horseshoes in there. Oh, the axle. So he could drive it.
Yeah, that's what you call ingenuity, using your brain.
But we made things do, you know, back in the Depression, you couldn't buy anything, so you used up stuff you had to repair on stuff. Worked, anyway.
And Gus, can you give us an idea of what your life has been like? When you were a little boy, what did your dad do? Were you raised on a farm, or were you raised
He
in?
probably can't hear you.
She wants to know if you were raised on a farm, where you grew up and where you
Well,
lived.
partly on the farm. And I lived in Hadley Village 3 years. From the time I was 8 to 12. And Hadley Village was a tough place. You know, they throw or form a ring around you, and somebody that could fight would get into that ring, and you don't know anybody, and I come home, my father was running a Standard Oil team, and he was delivering on Hardy Village that day, and I come home at noon with a bloody nose, and he said that you would come home tonight with another one, you get a licking after you get home. And he said, you've got two hands and use them. And that night, Costa Rambazzini stepped into the ring, and I went into him, striked him, and that was the end of that ring.
Wonderful.
You just had to fight. Oh, Hardy Village was an awful place.
Yeah.
Tough place.
Oh, the stone sheds everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
You lived over on the Coolidge farm one summer.
Yeah, part of the summer.
Yeah.
Will Farrer in Northwark had swapped his store for that farm. And then he sold that farm and bought another one in Mackville, and we moved to Mackville.
Now, what was that man's name? Was it Haskell? Will Haskell? Who was the name of the man that had the store?
No, Pascal was in Woka.
Oh, he was in Boca. This was in.
Yeah.
Oh.
What else about that? Dad really wasn't a farmer. He farmed for a few years, but he was really a logger and
Yes.
a
I
horse.
wanted to talk
about
about
Tell us some of your anything about horses in Mud City?
Horse pulling and all this.
Yeah.
Tell us about some of the horses you had in Mud City and what you did with them.
I can,
Well, a lot of them.
I can remember my dad saying, one day, Pa went up with his team, and we had those big, I don't know what they were, when we first moved, Topsy and Turvy, I think, wasn't it?
The two black ones?
Yeah, I can't remember, probably Gus remembers it better than I do. But anyway, they were mowing the field, and Pa he was leading with his little team of Morgans, I think they were. Always had sort of a nice,
Yeah.
spirited team. And boy, Pa had an awful time keeping up with it, because you were going round and round, one behind the other. And I think Gus was always catching up with Pa on that. So Pa came home and he said, boy, he said, that mowing machine of his must work awful easy. He said, my horses were sweating, and those little horses were just, it was funny. Pa wouldn't blame his horses because of the machine, but he had a better machine.
He wouldn't blame himself, because Gus is always.
I know, the horse knows.
He knows horses, and he knows how to handle them well.
How about Mabel?
Mabel, yeah.
About me. Well, I went to nursing school, graduated from there in '47, and then I had my family. After my family were grown, then I went and started work, and I worked in the nursing homes part-time, and then I worked for Dr. Silverstein over 20 years. And actually, I still work there a little bit, about 4 hours each winter, each week per winter, and just about 5 months in the winter. And then I retired in 1990.
And she paints.
Oh, that's right.
Retired and
And
tried to paint.
Well, Mabel,
No,
she was by far the best and the most improved painter that we had at the Jacob One.
Started out bad, must be, didn't
No,
I?
no. Of all the paintings, I picked a few of yours out just because, not because I know you, I know all the others, but just because you've got a good eye.
Well, I'm still taking lessons.
I know, that's
I just
good.
finished, actually, taking
Yeah.
another 6 weeks.
Yeah. No, that's right. You're a good knitter too.
I sell a lot of mittens, don't I?
Yeah.
Talk about things that's happening. Roy Stafford called me up one morning and said, can you see if you can hire Mike Gibbs and you and Leslie come down with your car? And when he get Roy Chetty was about the time in foot of Henry Ross's Hill, and he bought 20 cows of Stafford, and he turned them 20 cows out right in the village, and we drove them up to Sterling.
Oh my God! Is that possible, huh? Oh.
And that's something different than now.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is
that
so.
was a good drive.
Yeah.
You're on, Patrick.
Me? Well, I had to start driving truck when I was 15 years old. Dad went down to get a special permit for me so I could get a license to drive truck, so I could draw canned milk truck. Then from there, I went to work in the mill afterwards, Pratt Reed. Big pay of $35 a week I'd bring home. I was trying to live on that. Then I went to work for United Farmers, and I worked for 18 years there. And after that, I just got a few more jobs, like working for Town of Stowe plowing road, then Morrisville plowing road. Then I went down to Adams Mill, and from there I retired. And the day that I was 65, I quit.
And you spent some time in the army.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was
You
in
talk
the-
about wages, Roger.
Huh?
Talk about wages. The Depression, when I worked for Stafford,
Yeah.
I worked 7 days a week for $7.
Oh,
And Leslie lived in the schoolhouse, and he worked 6 days a week for $6.
Yeah.
And if I wanted a day off Sunday, I had to give Leslie my extra $1. So we generally round up $6.50 a week.
Boy, that's a big pay.
Well, Adeline, what did you get the first year you taught at that?
$1,000. No, I think it was $800 because I didn't teach the whole year, but
Yeah.
$1,000.
Because I started at 1,700,
Yeah.
which was, how many years after I graduated? I've been teaching, let's see, the fall of 49, I think.
And I started in 45.
45.
Yeah, 45.
So you see, it was a pretty good job.
Good job.
But it wasn't enough to make it exciting.
Where did you teach?
Up in East Bakersfield.
No.
And I boarded out, that was the worst part. And of course, I'd come home every weekend. So Friday, Fridays till Monday morning, I was gone. And I was paid $9 a week for board. 66, I'd get 60, let's see, when it was all through, I'd get $66 every 2 weeks. And take $18 out of that, try to run a car.
That's
But
what
you
you
could
could get
fill
3
your
gallons
tank,
of
you could
gas
fill
for
your
a
tank
dollar.
for $3. I could fill my tank for $3.
Right.
Yeah, I remember, we used to get 10 gallons of gas for $1 down
Yeah.
in the village.
Yeah,
Look at that.
no, times have changed. Yeah.
Everything is relative.
Now it's your turn, Gert.
Oh, yeah, well, first I went to school, I went to Johnson. I wish I'd taken agriculture instead of teaching. But anyway, I taught 2 years at East Bakersfield, and then, Paul wasn't feeling that great, so I thought, if I could get something near home, I'd stay at home and, do chores. And so I got a job at Stowe Hollow, and it was working pretty good, I'd be home and teach in the middle of the day and do chores at night. Chores in the morning before I got for school. And I still had that little 39 Ford. And that thing didn't have a speedometer, and I don't know, I used to make it, I used to time myself. It seems to me I could go from home to Stowe Hollow School in about 18, 20 minutes. I don't think I could do it now with my truck, I don't know. But anyway, I wasn't meant to be a teacher, you know, I realized that, you know, every vacation, everything, I'd come back home. So I quit. I quit during sugaring time.
I was going to say, I thought I remembered you looked out the window one day and said, this is it.
This is it, yeah, it was such a beautiful day, and I knew, so we had tap that weekend. And I knew the sap was running, and I said, God, I can't do this. So I called up the superintendent that night, and it was Mr. Spencer. Remember Spencer?
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, he
I
was
did not.
ugly.
Oh,
He was ugly.
he wasn't a very tactful man. Maybe, you know, I never got to, maybe you got to know him, I didn't never get to know him. But he'd come, you know, of course I was, you know, maybe a little bit, I wasn't regimented in my school. And there were, I don't know, 5, 6 bigger boys there in the classroom. And one day he said to me, and you know, when kids were through, I always had a lot of good reading material. We had a reading table where they could go and read. And he didn't like that freedom. Spencer, so he said to me, and he said it out loud, so I think the kids heard it. He said, you know, he said, someday you're going to lose control there. Because these kids have got too much liberty. I said, well, we get along good. Play ball during recess, we got everything going. So I didn't like him. I didn't think he had, you know, the tact that he should have had. You know, I don't think you should talk to a teacher like that in front of the student body. So anyway, so I asked Pa if it was okay if I came home. I was willing. So Spencer said to me, he said, no, that's what made me so mad. He said, what are you going to do on the farm? You going to do the bookkeeping? I said, no, I hate bookkeeping. So he said, you'll never teach in Vermont again. I said, I don't think I want to. So that was the end of my, then I farmed for 45 years or something like that. Had some good help, Jeanette and Therese and Lawrence, and we had a great time farming.
That's your turn, Jeanette.
Okay. Okay, I'm Jeanette Lepine, and after graduating from People's Academy, I was asked to work for Timmy.
Leave it for Jeanette. Jeanette.
No, because we've done the whole thing over. Let's cancel it.
We were so willing to do it for you.
It's not for me, it's for the library.
Well, yes, but you're the.
They're not going to know what you look like.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so after People's Academy, I was asked to work for Clifton Parker. His secretary became ill, and for 6 weeks I filled in with her. And then Ralph Barrows was the town clerk for another 6 weeks. And then I went to work for Francis Clark, who had a small loans business here. And it reached a point where it was rather boring, so I decided I'd like to try to do some traveling. So I got in touch with Pan Am, and they felt I was qualified, so I went with them in the Atlantic Division and traveled with them for 11 years. And between trips, I would come home on the farm, so I never truly left Mud City as such. And Lawrence and Barrett were willing to have me back in 63, I think it was. So I came back, and then I was retired from that about, well, Garrett dispersed the herd about in 96 maybe, or 99, I can't remember.
No, 96.
96?
Yeah.
96. So I've been retired since then, and still living in Mud City. So that's it for my history.
Very good.
So I think if anybody else has any more they'd like to add.
We had forgotten to talk about Mrs. Hannon, who was a big part of Mud City.
Okay. She was the first house landlady.
Yes,
The
that's
land.
right. And of course, we figured that she knew everything. You know, she could talk about any subject. So we called her the Lady of Philadelphia from a book that we had read as a kid, you know, Peterkin Papers. I don't know if you ever read the story, but anyway, whenever they had a problem, they'd go to the Lady of Philadelphia and she'd solve things. So, but I can remember one day Richard had taken her to a funeral. I don't know if it was Gerald's funeral or Mrs. Solheim, do you remember? But anyway, I guess the funeral, coming home, Richard said, God, he said, it's an awful time to have a funeral right during deer hunting. He said, everybody's out deer hunting. And that had tickled Mrs. Hammond so much. She said, wasn't that something? But she was a great cat lady too.
I think that house attracted weird people. Remember Levi?
Oh,
Crazy
yes.
Levi who lived there?
Oh, yes, you knew him probably.
Oh, yeah, I used to go up there every week.
You did?
Every Sunday I'd go up and read the Sunday papers.
Oh, is that right? And one of the guys was a watchmaker or something, huh?
Levi.
He did.
Oh, Levi?
He did.
Oh, I thought that was
He
Mark.
fixed the watches and clocks.
Take
Oh,
your watch up there and he'd fix it for you.
And throw
Watch and
statues.
guns.
Yeah, some guns.
oh,
Remember what he used to do on Halloween night?
what?
Go outside and shoot his gun, just keep
Oh.
kids away.
Oh, you did? Oh,
Yeah, and this man's name was Levi Wheelock for historic
Right.
reasons.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, and his brother was a professional something or other, I can't remember.
Martin.
Martin Wheelock was his name,
Is that right?
and I'm sure he's in Miss Mower's history.
Yeah, well, they were farmers. You know,
Yeah,
every,
He was specialized.
well, I can remember too going to school from the farm, you know, down to high school. And every house and barn had cows. You know, you could go right down through it. You could just, you'd see a cow everywhere. Every place that had a home and for cows. And now there isn't a cow all the way down through, except, of course, Junior Cole still has, you don't always see them there, but they're down over the bank there with the pasture, below the corner store.
And of course, we used to walk to school.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was never mentioned. I think busing came in, I don't know when. But the rural schools closed, wasn't it 52?
Yeah.
Or somewhere in that era. And, but kids were just, you know, so I'm not sure just when busing started, but you would head out on cold mornings and hoping that your mittens would keep you warm until you got down to
And then it was,
high school.
because there was no traffic either, nobody picked you up. But Mr. LaRush, he used to come down with his milk and he put his milk in the back seat. So he had room for two. And he'd stop and say, pick two.
I could pick two, yes.
And Rachel always wound her way in the seat. And she had the best feet on her because she had some wonderful felt boots that kept her feet going. Our feet were always so cold when we get to high school.
Oh, but it was fun just the same. Sometimes it would take us so long to get home. Remember, Dad?
I can
Well,
remember
that's true.
Adeline Knight coming back home, walking home from high school, 5-6 miles, and we'd come home and be pitch dark walking.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah.
We'd leave about probably around 7. Huh?
We weren't very,
Well,
well,
earlier than that.
In the
We
morning.
used to
yeah.
leave early.
oh,
I
yes.
used to walk all the way.
And we,
Yeah.
school didn't let out till 4, I
That's
think it
right.
was, so we
3:30
didn't
or
get
4.
home much before 4:45, and it was dark.
Yeah.
Really dark.
And then the last year, but before, well, oh, that was a sad story. Dorothy must have been in there, in the truck. Remember when Lawrence was, Andrea was driving that
Yeah.
cabriolet?
Half a truck.
Yeah, that half a truck, that old Woody. And he'd pick up a lot of kids on the way down. He'd pick up Ruth Washer, Ruth and her little brother, there, Robert. And then he'd pick up Allison Cleary at C.C. Miller's. Because C.C. Miller lived right near Union Carbide. And I don't know, one morning we were taking, he was couldn't drive very fast, I don't think the thing would go very fast, loaded like that. But when you went around the water trough field, you know, on the Randolph intersection there, Ruth was sitting on one of the doors, and the door let loose, and Ruth went flying across that pavement. And Robert was behind too, so he puts his head around to stop Andy. He said, "Andy, stop it! Damn you!" He said, "Ruth's falling out."
Joel, it was Joel.
No.
Was it Joel Rush?
No, well, no, but Robert, so Andre stopped, and Joel Rush was coming right behind us. He was working at McMahon, I think he was a mechanic. So he picks up the door, he leaves Ruth there, and he said, "Andre, you've lost your door."
Never mind your passenger.
And poor Ruth, I mean, she was great, but she didn't bring her to the hospital.
No, she didn't get
She
hurt.
could have really got hurt.
No one ever went to the hospital those days anyway.
No. So she, you know, she went on to school.
No, and speaking of hospitals, I mean, I don't think their business was that good because we never went to doctors or anything back then, did we?
Right.
I mean, you know, we had, the only thing I think we ever had as kids it was at Cold Hill, I can't remember what year, but the nurse came and they vaccinated us all. It was a cold winter day. What if you was an infection
Oh, yeah, they
cold,
scratch,
you
they
could
scratch,
go out and play a baseball game every day, no matter how cold it was. And, yeah, so I don't think the doctors did as well as they do today, as far as money goes.
Remember those Cosner Royal bottles?
Yeah.
Brown
Yeah.
Cosner Royal.
That came through from the government, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
Yeah, we had to take our pills and
We didn't have to,
Cosner.
it was liquid.
it was liquid, huh?
It was
We know
brown
liquid.
liquid.
You just
Better.
take a swig.
Better.
Yeah, it was liquid.
Well, they were, the bottles.
Oh, yeah, I remember
That
that.
worked at the
I wonder,
bottom.
did we use the same spoons?
Probably.
Of course we did.
Well, we used the same tumbler, did we, out of that cooler, you know? We'd go up and go up to the rushes and bring
Oh,
down
it's
the
cool, yeah.
Water.
bring down the water. And I think all we had was one cup.
Probably.
I can't remember.
No, we each had a cup with a tape on it with their name
Oh,
on
is
it.
that
and on the
right?
hook.
Oh, you remember that. Oh, that's good.
Does somebody remember how to tell, I think Richard does, snap the whip with the electric fence?
Huh?
Snapping the whip with the kids with the electric fence?
Mhm.
You tell it. That was a cruel one.
The guy that was on the end got hurt.
Yes, it's on the other end.
But it was,
She wants to know how you did it.
You take hold of a whole bunch of you, line up and take hold of hands, and you start going around, and then you reach over and grab the fence, because the last one got the worst.
That's right.
We used to do that.
That was a school game.
Yeah. Recesses were fun.
wild.
Wild is right.
And then we had a spell where we used to bury ourselves in snow. See
Oh,
who,
yes.
then somebody had to walk, they'd time to see who could stay buried under the longest. Boy, I never liked it. I always figured somebody wasn't gonna come back up.
We always made it.
Oh, yeah. I guess that's,
I'm glad we had left by that time.
Yes.
But
Now you have to play a lot on recess.
Oh, I'm sure that Dorothy probably remembers, and Richard, you remember what were the boys that lived over at Morehouse on the Well Dyke farm where Ginny Neal lives now? Remember, what were their names? Rover, and something. They came in and, you know, they were trenches, they hit a lot of different schools. And he came up to the bigger boys and he said, "I've fit many a fight on the school grounds." He was just challenging somebody to, you know.
Well, they were, back then, they were families that were transients. I mean, they would live maybe 6 months in a place, and Dyke's place, that seemed to be
that
where there was
was
always transients every year.
Is Mary, do you remember Mary LaValle? What was her name?
Yeah, La Valley.
LaValle.
She lived
She lived
down
with
towards.
Mr. Godden.
Mr. Godden and his housekeepers, it was his housekeeper.
Yeah, that had that white stallion and the sulky.
And so those kids were, you know, they had a chip on their shoulder. They were having a pretty rough life, you know, being booted from one end of the
Yeah,
world to the other. And they
a lot
were,
of
you
different
know,
schools.
they were just trying to fit in, and they weren't by doing it the way they were doing it. They were,
Barlows.
Yes, the Barlows.
yes.
We've been thinking for months, trying to think who their last names
Yes, the
were.
Barlows.
That's right, the Barlows. And then there were the Rathburns that came in.
Yeah, where G. Gullick is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
Have you got any of those old photos? We have the old photos of the schoolhouse.
I'm with you.
Yeah. We had that bobsled. Were you there the year the bobsled? Or was that, you were there the year of Miss Caroline?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
she was great.
Yeah.
And of course, back then, the one-room schoolhouses, they used to try to raise a little money so we could buy bobsleds and
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
And we used to have an annual Halloween box party.
Oh, God,
Remember
that's awful.
Every girl would have to make a box with a lunch in it, a shoe box. You know, decorate it. And then they would auction it off. And of course, the big thing was all the local hobos would come to try to buy the teachers' box.
Yeah.
And
That was
that was the best fundraiser.
Yeah.
That was,
That's pretty good.
I guess, you know.
Well, the fellow that bought the girls' box, then they had lunch together.
Yes, yeah,
Shoebox.
yes,
That was the
whole
idea.
idea. And then, of course, every Christmas, we had our little
Yeah.
nativity scenes and different little things.
Well, the neighborhood used to have those kitchen tonkets too, didn't it?
A little bit. I don't
I
remember
don't
those
remember.
much.
No, I know, they used to have them up at.
Yes, they did, because I used to
Teresa's
remember.
place.
Sure.
We used to have it at our house.
Every Saturday or Sunday, yeah.
Don't you remember those kitchen
All winter
tonkets we
long,
used to
while
have?
they weren't paid.
The neighborhood had them all.
The Keiths neighborhood.
Over at one house to the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Barbara had one at Teresa's house
Yes,
after, remember?
after, yes. Yes, and Gus did
Gus
the
did-
jig.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I never, that was before my day, I guess.
But do you remember the Zoot Suiters? Glenn called them the Zoot Suiters. It was after you were gone. And
But it was your mom and
yes,
my mom
and
and Dot's mom.
Ernestine.
And Dot.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Oh, well, you let Dot tell all about that.
Oh, yeah, they do.
And so,
They all had a lot of mending to do.
Yeah.
And so they'd go to somebody's house and they'd bring their mending, they'd all have mending, then they'd have tea and cake and gossip, and then they'd come home.
it was a weekly affair, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you couldn't, they said, well, I have to come, because if I don't, they'll talk about me. That's what made them come.
Yeah.
Was that the quilting parties? Is that the same thing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So-
I remember those.
Yeah, you do, yeah. Yeah, that wasn't that long ago. Mama was,
Well,
it was long ago, but not that long ago.
yeah, and Glenn,
Glenn was the one.
he named him the Zoot Suiters.
Never heard of it.
He was great for nicknames.
Oh, yeah. I said, what are you doing today? Zoot zooting. Might as well tell him, because he'd say it anyway.
Oh, yeah. So does anyone have anything else to add to this? We've gone an hour and a half now.
I do want to tell the story. I don't know how many people knew L.D. Bliss, not L.D. Bliss, but Hobart, who's L.D.'s father. You know, of course, Dr. Walker always had stories to tell about Hobart. Because Hobart, he had this bullpen, because he had a bull in the bullpen. He was afraid to go in to clean him out. So he just kept bedding him, you know. And one day one morning he found the bull dead. And so he called up Dr. Walker, he didn't know what had killed him. Well, Hobart in his barn still had the old type electric wiring, you know, and he had rubbed up against the ceiling and electrocuted himself.
Oh my God.
So anyway, one day when Pa was still living and we had all those pigs, and I was in the pig house cleaning one of the pens, And Hobart came in with his sow. And, because she just had weaned, you know, the sow, after she weans her pig, she comes in heat probably 2-3 days after you wean her. So he brought her in, and Pa was waiting for him, and Pa's boar was there, and they put her within the boar. Couldn't hear anything, everything was very quiet. All of a sudden I hear Hobart say, "Morris, your boar's no good." And Pa said, "Well, Hobart, I hate to say it, but she hasn't got much sex appeal." I thought that was a classic.
Okay, so what do you say?
Goodbye.
Anybody else? Well, okay, let's call it quits for now.
Yeah, so let's get together another 10 years and catch up on this.
Yeah, very
You
good.
promise to be here 10 years, we'll do it.
Yeah. Okay, so yes, we can